Hi, and welcome back to the Global Flow series. I am so excited to introduce you guys to Elena Estanol. She's all about flow. It's been her life mission and passion as well. So this is going to be an excellent interview. We're going to be talking all about being in flow and on fire today. Welcome, Elena.
Thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be here with you.
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm going to read your official bio so everybody knows exactly why the heck they need to be listening to this. And you're so perfect for this. I'm so excited. All right. So Dr. Elena Estanol is a #1 best-selling author, people, speaker, peak performance psychologist, and intuitive prosperity business mentor who has been up-leveling speakers, athletes, performers, and coaches and purpose-based entrepreneurs to become extraordinary beings and legendary leaders for over 16 years. She has developed the Inflow and On Fire system to help you break through your internal barriers to success, align and unlock intuitive guidance, achieve authentic confidence, and take inspired action, attract your ideal clients, create brilliant programs, double your income, and deliver transformational results. And who doesn't want a whole ton of that? So sounds amazing, and I'm so excited to learn more about you. Can you give us the slightly more unofficial bio? How did you get started, and how did you become obsessed with flow?
Absolutely. So I'll start by saying that both my parents are physicians, brilliant physicians. And so they really, of course, wanted me to follow a traditional path, like all parents do.
Yes.
And when I was a young kid, I actually watched Nadia Comaneci's Score the Perfect 10 on a black and white TV. Right? So it was like
goosebumps when you said that. I was like, oh, I need to go rewatch that.
It was like amazing. It was like this tiny little black and white TV. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And of course, my father is a neurologist and my mother is an ophthalmologist. And so my dad's like, no, you're not doing gymnastics. You're not going to land on your head and, be paralyzed and whatever. And so, but I just wouldn't stop. Like I was like jumping on the bed and I was, doing all these things. And so my mother enrolled me in ballet as a consolation prize. She was like, you're going to be able to do the splits and blah, 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 blah. And so they thought that was going to be, I think, a temporary thing to get me off their hair, I think. And little did they know that it was actually the thing that really ignited me. And I just loved it and fell in love with it. And I told my dad that I wanted to be a prima ballerina. And he said I was going to end up living in a shoebox if I did.
It's so funny hearing other people's like money stories and where their stuff came from, right? Oh my God.
Like we all come from a place, right? And it was like at that moment that I felt this little, I call myself a divine rebel because I like in that moment, like I felt like the ignition, like that fire in my belly of like I grew up in Mexico City. So it was not proper to like respond back to your parents and, but it was like, I don't know how old I was. I think I must have been like 11 or 12, but it was kind of this thing of like, watch me do it, like just watch, and I like spun around and like left the room, but it like really got me into this place of like, I am going to do this thing because it's what I love to do, and I've seen him be so miserable in his job. And I was like, I'll never do that. I'm always going to be following something that I love doing.
Wow.
So I got into really being obsessed with flow as a dancer, right? Like I experienced what that was. And then I just wanted to figure out how do you do more of that, right? How do you get into that? And then little did I know that these two things actually came together. I didn't understand it because at first I was just interested in peak performance. And then I got really obsessed with resilience. I read Anne Frank's story and it moved me so much, just being in the Holocaust and being, and it basically made me start reading every single Holocaust survivor book. And
Oh,
I
wow.
was like obsessed and trying to figure out like, what is it that made these people thrive? Like what made them survive, right? Because it was like,
Mm.
this is like the worst of the worst. And these people not only were surviving, but they were like, thriving. They were then now publishing books and doing these things, and I was like, how are these people doing that? And so I sort of got obsessed in understanding resilience and what makes people bounce back, and then got obsessed in understanding flow and peak performance. And, little did I know that both of these things actually were sort of the same thing. They had different titles. But when I did my dissertation, when I did my PhD, it was basically on resilience, and it was basically understanding, what helps us bounce back quicker, what helps us, get into that state of complete absorption and, intoxicating, blissful presence, that is flow. And throughout my whole life, I struggled. I think it's funny how when you set up yourself in a path, right? Like it's almost like you claim something, right? Like your
Right.
spirit claims something. And so I think that as a kid, as a young woman, I claimed understanding flow, and I claimed understanding resilience. And so of course I was like in the books and in school and all of this stuff, but it was also my life, like I, 6 months before I graduated with my BFA in dance performance, I broke my back.
Oh,
And
wow.
so everything that I had worked for, like, went down the drain, and it basically what made me start thinking, well, what am I going to, like, what now? Right. And then that's kind of what helped me get into, the study of performance psychology. And then I decided, okay, like I need to know more. And I went into doing my PhD in counseling psychology. But, interestingly, I feel like I've had to not just understand it through study and research, but live it. Like I've had to go through a divorce, through a foreclosure. 5 years ago, I had another pretty severe accident that left me disabled for almost 3 entire years.
Whoa.
So in some ways, I feel like it's been not just the study out here, but the study and understanding of it, like in my body, of how do we not just get to this amazing peak, but then how do we get completely wiped out and then build ourselves back up to, get wherever it is that we want to do. And now I am performing as an aerial dancer as well.
Wow.
So again, going from like the depths of despair to being able to fly, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Oh my goodness. This is like such an inspiring story. And yeah. So before we dive into any more, you touched on it, but I want to just make sure we catch your take on it. What does flow mean to you?
So I have a very long definition in some way, that it's,
I'll try and take notes.
But no, I mean, because we're going to be talking about it the whole time. I mean, I think it's a short and a long one in some ways. So, I think it's one of the most blissful and tantalizing experiences that we will ever have. It's, if you've experienced it, it's like a drug, it's intoxicating. It is completely unforgettable. It will be etched in your mind as a peak experience. There's no doubt about it. And what I think that what it is actually an altered state of consciousness of relaxed attention.
Nice.
Like relaxed attention and embodied presence.
So I'm just writing that down. Relaxed attention and embodied presence. I love it. Beautiful.
But there's all kinds of components of it, as you probably know, and, that are sort of integrated into what the experience is, which is, I think, why so many people have been obsessed with it,
Right? It's this sort of fascinating thing that I think a lot of people are doing, you know, specific scientific studies on it, and then other people have no idea about what that is, but they feel it's just about living in alignment. And so, yeah, there's so many different sort of paths, and I think it's almost like a combination of both. It's very difficult to do it if you're not in alignment, right? So
Absolutely.
it's sort of all aspects. So
Absolutely.
I want to take it. No, there's so many things I want to ask you. But I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, what do I ask next? What do I ask? So can you, again set the context for this a little bit? How is, you mentioned, is peak performance the same to you as flow, or what? So that's just the same for you. It's the same thing.
For me, it is. Yeah.
Okay.
I believe, you know, I mean, peak performance is what we tend to, and I'm glad that you're bringing it up, because I think that a lot of people kind of raise eyebrows. And I have had sort of this experience when I say that I'm a peak performance psychologist, that people are like, well, you know, because a lot of people associate that with sort of the intensity of the training of that's required for, you know, some performers and athletes, you know, and so then they think that I'm going to be some kind of Nazi old school coach, that it's going to be like, you know, and and the reality of it is that there is a particular so flow is not something that can be controlled or created at will, which is really important, because I think that the more that we want it and the more that we want to make it happen, it's not going to happen. But there are a lot of characteristics of the experience of flow and of the experience of the, you know, and really why is it called a peak performance, is because we think about a peak experience as being something that it's so memorable, right? It's etched in your mind. And a peak experience could be a negative thing or a positive thing, really, you know, like in one of my books, I kind of talked a little bit about experiencing, hearing my mom being basically robbed at gunpoint through a door, and how that was a very negative peak experience, and how that impacted me, right? And so in some ways we have peak experiences both in the negative and the positive, but in some ways, like, those experiences become etched in our minds, and they also trigger an entire set of responses from us to be reacting in a certain way. So a lot of times people experience a sense of flow in reaction to a negative event, because all of a sudden, like, everything just clicks into place, right? And this is when, you know, we hear of mothers that lift cars and things that are like completely, you know, unbelievable, but it's because, you know, all of these things are clicking into place. And so I think that a lot of times, you know, for me, flow is certainly the actual moment, right? Like the moment to moment experience of that peak experience of like what is happening, and you know, the time slows down, and it almost feels, to me, it's a little bit like, probably the best description of flow for me, it's like one of the scenes from the Matrix, like a slow motion scene from the Matrix, right? Like when Neo is like going like this and averting all the bullets, and somehow like everything is happening really fast, but somehow he has the sense of like time distortion and like a sense of control, that he's able to kind of control and respond to the environment in the best possible way. And it's not really that he has that sense of control, but that is actually the experience of flow.
Yeah, beautiful. I just had a realization there when you were talking about the negative ones. I often talk about risk-induced flow, and you know, being brought on by like procrastination and things like that. But I hadn't thought of it. I've been a volunteer surf lifesaver down on the beach here in Sydney, and if there's some sort of emergency or the alarm goes, or you just lock into, your training kicks in, and suddenly you're doing stuff and you're on it. And I've just realized, I think one of the reasons I love it is because I get to experience flow. because it was like ding, and then we get addicted to it, because while we might sit on the beach for 5 hours, you know, twiddling our thumbs doing nothing, it's those moments where there's a little bit of excitement and emergency that we, I guess, get addicted to. And I suppose that's the same for all emergency services and firefighters, because I'm like, oh, I could never do that. How could they? It seems so foreign to me. I'm like, that's just, I couldn't do that. But I guess they're getting addicted to the flow buzz.
Absolutely. And I think that that's exactly what it is. And you said something there too that was really, really important. You said, all of a sudden we hear this bell and our training kicks in. And so this is actually where the peak performance piece really fits in, is that we actually do have to train for it, right? Like we need to understand all of the characteristics that are going to allow us to get into flow, and we need to train for it. We are not going to get into flow doing something that we're unfamiliar and or that we have very little skill. We need to hone our skill. We need to develop our skill. We need to train. We need to practice. We need to do all of these things. And then the moment, you know, I think about when like the curtain goes up, right? Because I'm a performer. When the curtain goes up, then you let it all go, right? And then trust, like you said, like when the bell goes off, then you just trust that your body knows what to do because you've done all the training ahead of time.
Yes, oh my goodness. Yes, I love that. Because if the thing is, if you start to think too much in any kind of performance, it falls apart, right? Like that's the worst thing. You've got to be so in it to experience it. And you can't do that if you haven't trained.
Totally. Well, I mean, and this is going to sound a little funny, but I mean, this is also a really great example, which this is where we probably all get to experience flow. It's having sex.
Ooh, yeah. We could want to hope so.
So if you're actually thinking too much, right. You know, and again, like I'm just, you know, like I want people to understand that it's not like this, like, oh, this is only that it only happens to performers, you know, like I happen to get into flow a lot while I'm writing and when I'm doing creative things, that's, you know, but we all are capable of experiencing flow in our life, right? And so if you think about like the best sex that you've had, you're probably in flow. If you're actually thinking about stuff and you start getting in your head, like then like it's over, like game over, like
absolutely. That's hilarious. It's a very good point though, right? If you're like thinking about, you know, the dishes in the sink or like, you know, whatever else is going on, or oh God, what about my thighs? It really kills the buzz, right?
Totally. But it's the same thing. And this is why it's so important. I mean, so this is why, you know, I work a lot with people that end up having a lot of performance anxiety. Speakers are really well, I've worked with a ton of speakers who really have a message that they want to share, but they are terrified of the idea of getting in front of a microphone or a camera or something, you know, and really the problem is that they're focusing too much on themselves, right? Like we're worrying too much about like, oh my gosh, like is my hair blah, blah, blah. Are people going to think that, you know, and as long as the focus is on you and like all of the judgments and anticipations that you have about the future or the things that you've done in the past, you're not in the moment, and then you'll never get into flow, right? When you sort of are able to be in the moment and say, why is it that I'm doing this? Is it, you know, it's either because you probably are doing something because you really enjoy it, right? I think that's another characteristic of flow, that most people get into a state of flow when they're doing something. They're getting reinforced just from doing whatever it is that they're doing. They're not doing it because they're going to get more money or because they're going to get more famous, or, you know, that it's just the experience of it in itself is so awesome and so self-reinforcing that you're like, you do it anyway, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I was just thinking, when you were talking about speakers, I used to have so much, well, and still, you know, I still get nervous a little bit, but when I did my event, I had to, you know, I wanted to be slimmer. I wanted to have lost more weight, you know, and, you know, whatever, you will always have this stuff going on. I had to mentally leave it at the door. Yeah. I was like, if this is running through my head and I care about this for another second, I'm not serving. And I just was like, okay, leave it at the door, leave it at, like, it is what it is. You can't do anything about it now, girl. You've had 6 months.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Leave it at the door, right?
Which which we all have to do in some way. You know, I mean, you think about like parenting, or I mean, it happened to me as a choreographer when I was choreographing, you know, and I would work with my dancers, and then like opening night, it's like, okay, like I need to let it go. Like my work is done. Like I did everything, and now it's up to them, and now I need to trust them. And you know, same thing with parents. Like parents work with their kids, and you know, and then it's times for them to go to school, or it comes time like, and then they need to step back, and you need to say like, you've done your work, and now you need to trust that, you know, your kid is now going to pick up the slack, right?
Right. Absolutely. Which I'm sure is like a lot easier said than done. I don't have children.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, all these things are easier said than done. But I mean, what you said about your event is so huge, right? Is when we recognize like, this is not really about us. It's about the mission. It's about what we are, like the bigger why that we're carrying, you know?
Absolutely. So what are some of I know we can't demand flow on tap. And I think that's one of the most frustrating things about it, right? Because we're like, we want it, but we know we can't. So we've mentioned being skilled, enjoying it, not thinking too much. But what are some of the ways that you help people get into flow? Like, how would you help get us on that path that we might get there a little bit more often?
So I will say, you know, and this is something that just happened, but so if I don't answer your question, please pin me to it, but I want to say that.
Whatever you need to say.
Well, and is that we just published this week a book that's called Find Your Flow. It's like the third in a series, and it's and it was like 5 of us, 5 authors, and really the challenge was, can you publish a book in a week?
Oh, wow.
So so each of us had the task of writing our chapters in a super short period of time. It was like maybe we all had like a day or two. I pretty much wrote my entire chapter on flow overnight. Like I stayed up like an entire night and then got it written, you know. And my husband's like, what time did you go to bed? I'm like 5. And he goes, did you get into flow? And I'm like, yeah. and so why I'm mentioning it, you know, and I'm mentioning A because right now it's only 99 cents on Amazon. So like, it's a really great time to get it. But B, because in my chapter, I kind of talk a lot about like all of these pieces, and I talk a lot about flow on demand. Like, so is it possible to get flow on demand? Because I mean, this is the thing that I've been obsessed with. Like, you know, can we get it on demand? Can we teach it to others? And so to answer your question, there's 2 ways in which I work with people. One of it is, the first part of it is identifying all of the blocks that are way to be able to find flow. Yeah. And that's usually, you know, it's a little bit of an excavation process sometimes, but that's a really important piece, because we can start with like these fabulous things. And if there's like a lot of, let's just say there's a lot of anxiety and, you know, if there's this conception of like wanting to avoid pain or want to have a lot of safety and certainty, right? Or a lot of perfectionism and avoiding shame. Like, we are so motivated to avoid pain. And so it's fascinating, because it's like, here we are, we want to fly, right? Like, we're like, I want to fly. I want to do all these amazing things. But can you make it painless? Can you make it fast? And can you make it certain that it's going to work and that I'm not going to get hurt on the way? You know? And so, you know, so I talk a lot about how people want magic wands and crystal balls. And, you know, I even joke with my clients about like, here, let me take my crystal ball out, because those 2 things are sort of like these mythical things that give us control and safety, right? And gives us the assurance of, and the thing is, flow doesn't happen that way. Like, that part of flow is like the unknown. Like part of flow is actually embracing the risk. Part of flow is being able to get into doing something for the sake of doing it, right? So I was talking to a group of graduating seniors at the university, and I was talking a little bit about this, and I said to them, you know, we always ask the question of like, what is the thing that you would do if you knew that you couldn't fail, right? Which is a great question, and I love it. And for me, the deeper question is, what is the thing that you would do even if you knew that you would fail?
Yes.
Right? Because that is the worthwhile thing to do. Right? Like, what is the thing that you would do even if you knew that you would fail, because of the experience of it? Because you know that just being able to get to do it would be like amazing in itself.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that is, you know, I think that we need to start changing the way that we think. So taking out blocks, you know, like looking at modifying and really shifting and overhauling the way that we are thinking about our experience, how we're getting into it. And then it's really getting into really the system of inflow and on fire that I have, where I take them through each one of those 7 steps to, you know, to get them in the practice of, you know, managing, like practicing managing each of these pieces, right?
What are the 7 steps?
I'll give you the 7 steps. Yes. Okay. So I'm gonna start by saying that one of the biggest. So you know, you probably are familiar with Csikszentmihalyi, and he is somebody that has really shaped a lot of what I've done. I've heard him speak many times and read many of his books. And one of the things that I feel like was really, really important for me to understand, as I was like so obsessed with flow, was this balance of challenge and skill, which I feel is so important, right? So he had this beautiful grid, and he talked about if you have low challenge and low skill, what you get is apathy.
Yeah.
And have low challenge and high skill, you'll get boredom. So this is sometimes what we experience when perhaps you're doing something that it's like too easy for you. You seem bored and distracted, and that's because your skill level is way higher than the challenge. Yeah. Then he talked about high challenge, low skill is like the perfect recipe for anxiety, because of course, right? If you think that you're capable of doing this much and all of a sudden you're being demanded this much, then we're anxious. And I think that this is where a lot of the people live in our society. Like we are living in this box where we feel this deficit, and that deficit may be imagined or real, right? So and without opening a whole can of worms, you know, the imagined piece is, you know, we struggle with our confidence. We don't really often, we don't feel the confidence that matches our competence level. And so a lot of times it's not that the challenge here and our skills here. A lot of times is that the challenge there and our skills there, but we perceive our skill to be lower. And therefore we have all this anxiety, right?
Yeah.
And then finally, right, he says that with high challenge and high skill is how you get into flow, right? So clearly, if I had to say, well, I need to write this book chapter and we need to publish this book in a week, and I had never written anything before in my life, and this was my first book, I probably would have gone into like this state of anxiety and probably had gotten completely overwhelmed and shut down, and that wouldn't have happened, right? So it was possible, I think, for all of us, because we had all written before, we were all writers, and so there was already a high level of skill. So having the challenge was like that little fire, right? Like lit under our butts. I was like, yeah, okay, like, can we stretch ourselves in this way and make this happen? And of course it did, right? But I think that that's an important piece, because I think a lot of times people beat themselves up that they can't get into flow when they're actually doing something new, right? So many of the entrepreneurs that we start working with, and they're starting a new business and they're doing all these things, and then they're frustrated that they're not in flow, but it's all a new thing.
Right? Absolutely, absolutely. I see this all the time, all the time. And it's this beautiful. I love that you brought this up. I love that guy. I'm never very brave enough to try and pronounce his name. And you did it beautifully. I need to practice that. But yeah, I see this all the time, right? We're the lack of patience, I think, as well in the entrepreneurial community, right? We're always wanting to be there already, and
Totally.
and we're not always willing to learn the skills sometimes to be able to get into that place.
Totally. Well, sometimes I think people are not willing to hire a mentor or hire a coach, which I think it's probably the biggest mistake that anybody could do, because they're like, oh, well, I should be able to figure it out. And it's like, nobody figured it out on their own. Or if we did, then it actually took us way longer because we actually didn't get the help and the support to learn the skills and have the mentorship and have the support to make it happen. Right.
Oh, I laugh at what I didn't know. Right? You don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And I laugh. I was very lucky to meet my first mentor literally the day I quit my job, and like, thank God for that. Like, I can't even imagine where I'd still be had that not happened. I'd probably still have a room in a wellness center somewhere struggling to get clients.
Well, because sometimes people are like, oh, can you tell me about this thing? Right? Like people say, like, can you tell me about funnels? And I'm like, well, like, what exactly? And, it's like, well, and then like, well, I'll just Google it. And I'm thinking, good Lord, like that, that's not going to work,
No. Or like, they're like, oh, I've done my blocks work. I figured that out. And I'm like, what did you do? And they're like, oh, I read a book. I'm like, great. Then what did you do? And that's it. And I'm like, oh, no, it doesn't work like that.
Anyway, so to answer your steps,
yes,
to answer your question about the steps.
Before we jump into this.
Yeah, please.
I have one question that came up about the high challenge, low skill, creating the anxiety and lower confidence. So traditionally we hear that men don't have so much of a confidence problem. They're a bit more brazen. They'll go for a job interview if they think they can do half of the job description. They're like, yeah. But a woman won't even apply for the job until she's done like 95% of the job description, for instance, right? Do you find a difference between men and women and the speed or their ability to get into flow based on their confidence or their perceived skill level? Does that have any impact?
That's a fantastic question. And I guess I have not been measuring, right?
It just occurred to me.
It's a fantastic question. I'm not like jumping into it because I'm like, it's a fantastic question. What I'm going to say is that men often appear more confident and they're able to talk the talk, but they're not always able to walk the walk.
Agreed.
So they
I think that a few of them as managers.
Do you see what I'm saying? So they struggle with confidence as well. It just shows up differently. And so as long as they're struggling with confidence and as long as they're being self-conscious, they're not going to get into flow. Neither of them, regardless of their gender. And it's only going to happen when they finally are able to, I think about flow, one of the prerequisites of flow is trust. And so, so maybe I'll even start with one of the first steps of this piece, besides the introduction, is I talk about flow as a way to manage our entire energetic system. And this goes a lot more in depth in the free gift that we will be giving. And people, when they sign up, they will actually get, it's like a little mini course. So they'll get not just the guide, but they get this little videos with exercises at each one of these pieces.
Cool.
It's just kind of like a little intro. But so the first step is managing our, what I call our spiritual energy, which I have called intensity. And this is really the on fire part. When we are truly in full alignment and living our purpose, we are really plugged in. We are, people are like, how are you? I'm like, I'm excited. Like, I'm just plugged into this source that just feels like this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing and I'm here to do. And it's really important and I need to talk about it. Right. And so we have this intensity. And if you don't have that clarity and that piece in our course, in my paid course, that whole piece, it's a huge deep dive into actually awakening and tuning into our intuition and learn how to use our intuition as guidance and learning how to trust. Because without that component, right, like we can't get into flow if you can't trust, right? So I talk a lot about passionate detachment because, it's like, and they're like, what's that? I'm like, you have to be super passionate. You have to jump with both feet in and then totally detach from the outcome. And that's something that it's like so simple as a concept and so hard to do.
This is probably one of the questions I get most. They're like, but I want it. How am I supposed to like surrender and detach? And I'm like, it's okay, relax. Yes, it's
which
like,
kind of goes back to this piece of you can't fly and have certainty. You can't fly and be attached to the bridge. Like it's going to be either of the two, right? You either let go of the bridge and then you jump,
yeah,
and get to fly, or you attach to the bridge and then you stay grounded and stable and certain.
Yes. All of this. I'm like, I just love the way you've put a couple of things. Yeah, and especially that they want it painless, fast, and certain. And I'm like, I don't think any part of my journey has been painless, fast, or certain. Maybe some of it's been fast, but I don't know. Anyway, sorry, carry on. I don't want to cut you off.
So anyway, so I hope that helps you. So in some ways, it's like when we keep looking for the answers outside of ourselves, we keep also stimulating that anxiety, because then it's about, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then there's judgment about that. When we really learn to tune in to our source of guidance, to our intuition, to really learn to trust how to read our body, how to read the way that we are getting guidance, it makes it so much easier to make decisions really quickly and to trust and to just say, I'm going to do this, and then screw everybody else. And, it doesn't matter if everybody else is telling you that you're being insane. You're like, I am, and it's totally okay. And you're okay with it. Right. And one of my most favorite quotes is Steve Jobs. And it's like a long quote about this is for the crazies and the rebels and their round pegs and square holes and all that kind of thing. And he says, because the only people who change the world are the ones who are crazy enough to think they can.
Yes.
And so, so I think about, but we can't really do any of the other pieces. We can't get into flow until we understand and get that piece super aligned. Right? Yeah. The second step is actually managing our emotional energy, which I call quality. And this is the quality of our energy, right? So you can have a lot of energy and it could be really negative, and then it's bringing you down all the time, and now we have this great research that like tells us about like the vibration of our emotions. And we can actually see that, joy and peace and gratitude are the highest vibration states. And so it's really about learning how to manage your emotional energetic state, how to manage the quality of your energy so that you're not impacted or thrown off or, pulled off through your environment and other people. And, you're not reacting,
yes.
Like you are actually in your power and choosing how it is that you want to be and how it is that you want to live and feel and act. And, and I think that even just getting those two pieces is like, you'll get people eating out of your hand. Right.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's so important. And it, like, being negative and down, it's exhausting. Like, it's just exhausting. So yeah, absolutely channeling it. And when you're on, and I mean, you talk about it, but when you're on purpose, there's an extra energy that I think that comes from source that just literally flows through you. There was somebody, I was at A-Fest and I was talking to one of Vishen's right-hand men, Amir, or he used to be, and he was saying, he's like, there's something's changed in him. He's like, he used to like be tired, take days off, get burnt out. And he said every time he shows up, he's on fire no matter wherever he is. It's really weird. And I was like, it's because he's living on purpose. And like, he's found his like calling. He's channeling this massive energy because it's no longer about him anymore. And we were both like, oh, that's what that looks like.
And that's what I was talking about, intensity. Right? You know, I've had people like, I've had my dad be like, are you hypomanic? And I'm like, no, I am just really on fire. I mean, this is why, this is why I call it inflow on fire, because this is just really about you just being totally plugged into source and just feeling that energy flow through you, and just being like, you have that single-mindedness and that like, this is what needs to happen. And it doesn't matter what's happening. Like, it doesn't matter if things aren't working. It doesn't matter if people are saying no. It doesn't, like, you're like,
boom. Yes, absolutely. Right.
You're making this happen.
I love it. Yes. All of this. Yes. So important. So important. Okay. Just, have you got a few more? I know we're.
I do. And I'm just like, I'm kind of taking it off you because I have some time, but I didn't know if you did or not. So
all right. We're good. We're good. So yeah, I don't want to stop at number 3. I think I'd be lynched. Can you imagine the messages I'd get? They'd be like, you stopped at number 3. I'd be like, I'm so sorry. Okay, and, let's do it.
And I'll say that, they can get all 7 steps to at least know what they are when they download my gift. And,
yes, exactly.
And then they'll get that little tiny bit of a free class. And then, of course, if they want to go deeper, they can reach out to me and we can enroll them in the longer course. But the third is managing our mental energy, which is really focus, right? And so I kind of talked a little bit at the beginning as to the ability to, one of the components of flow is relaxed attention, right? Which in some ways incorporates those 3 things all together, right? Being able to stay really focused and present, but also with this place of like relaxation. Like, it can't be like, right? So when you're on purpose and you trust, you can relax, right? When you're positive, you can like relax. So you're energized, but not in the like, it needs to happen or else it's going to be the end of the world, which is a very different energy.
It certainly is. Yes. I've experienced both.
Me too. I could totally talk about it.
I love it. Yes. And that focus piece is something I think most people struggle with. Absolutely. And again, possibly more women struggle with this than men, just because of our sort of diffuse awareness tendencies.
And I did an entire webinar just a little bit ago, almost 2 hours, just on focus, because it's just so deep, and it's something that's impacting all of us. And I'll just say that the little piece about what I believe is that what's happening is that our world has evolved really quickly. Like, we're being bombarded by a zillion different things, and it's funny. We upgrade our phones all the time. We upgrade our cars, our washing machines, but we haven't actually thought about upgrading our brain. And so that's, in my opinion, that's really what needs to happen for all of us. We need to actually invest in upgrading our brain and expanding our capacity to be able to deal with this new world in which we are, where we are being bombarded by all of this information and technology and access, and which is fantastic because we made good use of it today when we couldn't get a hold of each other, right? So it allows us to do the thing that we're doing. But again, I think that we totally need to upgrade our brain to be able to expand our neuroplasticity, our capacity to actually be dealing with stuff and to be able to adjust to all of that. And we do have a pretty comprehensive program that we do that's called Quantum Brain Reboot, where we do a lot. We actually combine the two programs and we do that. But, you know, I don't want to, you know, I just kind of want to say just the importance of really like, being intentional about improving our focus, about present. So if nothing else, you know, I'm a huge proponent of meditation. Many of my clients say, you always have a way to bring it back to meditation, you know, but I feel like meditation is one of those very easy to access, available to anybody strategy that can really change your brain, can improve neuroplasticity, can improve focus, can improve, you know, all kinds of things. Usually it's difficult because most of us, it takes a while to get into the habit, and we need to have somebody guiding us. And so it's a long road to get to a place where you have incorporated that as a way of living and it's a habit for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that is a very, you know, accessible thing that anybody could do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. Number 4.
And then step 4 is managing the quantity of our energy, which is the physical energy, right? And again, and this is like almost like a whole other thing, but it's like we don't just exist in our heads, like we are integrated beings. And so we can be, you know, and this, in some ways I have intensity at the top and quantity at the bottom, because I think that as we start getting really plugged in, and as we get this surge of intensity, all of a sudden we start feeling a little bit like we're like super beings. And we sort of let go of the management of our physical energy. So all of a sudden, like for me, like I was sleeping less because I was like waking up in the middle of the night with like, oh, I have to write this, you know, and I started writing, and like it was like this, you know, stuff. But I want to just say that it's important that we balance it all, right? So it's like sleep and like proper nutrition, and it's hydration, and it's physical activity, and really making sure that we are doing things that are stimulating our creativity and play, which I think is an important component of like huge component of flow, like creativity and being playful. I think that we tend life to be so serious. And so like really doing things that are fun and exciting. You know, I think that if you're ever feeling stuck, then you need to stop whatever it is that you're doing and then go outside, go into nature, or do something creative, or go do something fun, and you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah.
Big and then let's see, 4 or 5. The 5th step is integrating and coming up with appropriate systems, structures, and routines, because all of these things and all of the practices and all of these things that I'm mentioning, we have like specific practices that we teach and that people do, and of course we incorporate blah blah blah, but without actually putting them into a routine or a system, you know, it'll be like a diet, which I always say that a diet is a temporary condition. You know, that implies that it will stop at some point, and then at some point, then that means we go back to doing all of the same crappy behaviors that we were doing before, and so then it doesn't really work.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's really about finding the system that works, and not to say like, here's what you're going to have to do at 7 a.m. You have to do da da da. I'm not that way. I feel like it's really about each person finding their flow. Like you were telling me a little bit about how your day is kind of, you know, and I'm like, I tell people like, figure out where is your best time to work. Because for some people, it's like, all the gurus always say it's in the morning and you need to do all the stuff in the morning. And, you know, and I teach that too. And you know what? I'm not a morning person. Like my husband says that my IQ drops like 20 points in the morning, and I'm not a morning person. Like all my creative bursts happen at night. And so I've had to like learn to manage that. Like, you know, I've done, and then I sit in front of my computer and I'm like, okay, like, you know, and I'll write something, and then what I write in the morning, when I write at night, it's like, you know, so it's like you have to find your system, your blueprint,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love that. Yeah, no, it's so important. And yeah, getting them in there, getting them to stick is the fun bit, right?
Right, you know,
and
it's something that we resist again. Like, you know, like I know I've resisted structure and systems for like pretty much my whole life. It was a long time since I finally understood these systems are going to set me free.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was traveling for 6 months, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll get so much. I didn't get that much. I didn't have a routine. I wasn't getting that much done. I wasn't regularly exercising, and it threw everything off. And I've been in one place for 3 months, and I've done more in the last 3 months than I have the last 9. Because I'm like, I go to my Pilates class, you know, it's like I have my little routine.
Your routine. Yeah.
Right. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we all need, you know, despite of how much we think that we don't want.
I'm such a free spirit, but I quite like my routine.
Which is why I didn't like it, you know, like I'm such a free spirit. Like, I'm like, I don't want to be, you know, but it's like your routine could be anything that you make it, you know. I think that that's where we make the mistake, is that we think, I don't know, for years and years. I mean, this is just an example, but I think this is kind of how we are taught to think. It's like, okay, well, how do you take care of your keys? Well, you have a nail by the door, right? Like you have and so for years I had like nails by my door and my keys were nowhere to be found. And I was like frustrated trying to find my keys. And finally I'm like, okay, why do I just keep doing this thing that clearly doesn't work for me? Like this doesn't work for me, you know? And when I got honest with myself, which I think it's one of the steps in between, you know, I'm giving you kind of the pillars. There's like all these like steps and processes and stuff that we do in between. But when I got honest with myself and I said, okay, let's be honest, like this doesn't work, right? So what might work? You know, why doesn't this work? And what might work, right? And then I decided, well, I usually come home.
Back.
And then I asked myself, right, like, why is it that I don't put it up there? Well, I come home with my hands full, right? So I don't have the reach to be able to reach and put the key, right? So when I finally asked that question and I had the answer, I was like, okay, so what would work? Well, somewhere down below where I could just drop it, right? And the moment when I was honest with myself and I wasn't judging, I let go of the judgment. And, you know, I'm just saying this simple thing, right? Let go of the judgment. And then I asked, so what might work, right? It's like, well, somewhere where I could just go like this, right? And I was like, great. So I just got a little container and the keys have been in the right place since, right?
Excellent. I love it. Yeah, totally. Makes sense.
And it's like, it's such a silly example, but I use it because I think that this is a really great example of our lives. You know, we try to do something because somebody else said that this is the right thing. And again, it's really about being able to be honest with ourselves and start looking at what's going to work for you, given your life, given your brain, given what you do, so that you become more effective and efficient without you having to change all of who you are to try to make a system work.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so much good stuff. So much good stuff. All right. Last 2 points, and then, well, I'm just very conscious of your time, and I appreciate
Yes. Well, I'll give you the last two, and you know, and I'll just do them really quick. The sixth one is what I call time jumping and time mastery, which is really, you know, the ability to both not just manage our time and our schedule, but to really use our ability to visualize and to start changing the stories that we are dragging with ourselves, both about things that have happened in the past and things that we project into the future. And so, you know, we create our reality, right? We create our reality twice. And so there's, I call it sort of like the manifesting our desires, you know, and this is probably the most esoteric part of it, but it's like we create our reality twice. First in our minds, and second in real time. And when we start tapping into some of these techniques, one is about, managing our time in the present moment, and, and being able to use our schedules and create massive calendars and all of those kinds of things. Then the last one is really about like really manifesting anything and everything that we want by being able to use some of these strategies, both to heal some of the stories that we are carrying and creating the new reality into the future, right? And it's and so these two pieces kind of interlace, because I think that when you quantum leap time, it's like it's our perception. Time is really just a perception, right? Which is kind of what's so fascinating about flow, because most people that get into flow, I feel like, for me, it feels like time stops, or like things just go kind of slower, right? And when it's over, it's kind of like, oh, it's over. That went so fast, I
love it. Yeah, it's like I'm like, whoa, like you get into this crazy place. It's so good. I love it. Last point.
Well, so that was the last point.
Oh, that was the last one.
I just tried to do 6 and 7 together.
We did just together. All right.
So that we get to it quicker.
Perfect. Yes. Okay, got it. Love it. Oh my goodness.
We do a piece about evaluation, how we evaluate and perceive, and those kinds of things, because I think that's the other piece of the stories, and keeping positive momentum. But
and it's all about the meaning we give everything, right? I mean, I would actually love to get into talking to you about resilience and what that means and all about that, but I think that's a whole nother interview, and I would absolutely love to have you. I'm going to create a podcast. Can you please come on and talk about that?
Well, but I can just say, and I will just say this piece, and why I believe that these two things come together is that that part of flow, I think it's also our ability to bounce back quickly, right? Yes. Which is where it intersects with resilience. So one of the examples that I gave in the book was, it happened very recently. I was having performances for my aerial dance, and they started the music before I got into place. And so all of a sudden I got into place, and I see that they had started the music, and I'm sure I had this deer in the headlights look of like, and I even thought like, can you start the music? And then I realized like, well, of course they're not going to restart the music. The audience is already there. Like, what are you thinking? Like all this stuff is happening in my mind, and I was like, it's going, so I just had to like immediately just be like, oh, it's going. Okay. So I just had to pick up wherever it was, and then just get into my routine and then do it. Do you see what I'm saying? So I think that when those moments happen, those are moments that can be like breaking point moments for a lot of people, where things all of a sudden don't go the way that we expect them to. So I feel like flow, it's really about our ability to also kind of go with the flow. Things aren't going to go perfect, but if you can recognize that you have the ability to bounce back and just kind of follow the flow of things, then you're going to do so much better. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you've noticed my mug, but it actually says "Go." I love it. I was like, if I'm going to be drinking during this whole series, I need to have this mug. So funny, absolutely. And I think that's possibly one of the most it's not the word, respected, underestimated, no, that's not even the right word, underappreciated maybe skill that you can have as an entrepreneur or anyone in this world, is that ability to bounce back, because it's not all going to be certain and beautiful, and there's so many moments where I'm like, oh God, like that's terrible, and or whatever has happened or something else. Like I got an email this morning, and I'm just like, it's fine. It's like it's kind of got to just come with it. Even I think I've had
6 people drop out of this interview series over the, and you're like, okay, okay, you know, and you can't get too attached to it or make it mean all this stuff, right? People are busy, these things happen. There's somebody better. Like you came in as a, like, because somebody else couldn't do it, and I'm so glad we've had this conversation. So you've always got to be like looking for that, like there must be some, like there's a reason for this, right?
Absolutely. There's this beautiful poem, and I don't know if you're familiar with it, and I don't have it memorized or anything, but it's called Advice from a River.
Ooh, check it out.
So you'll have to check it out, but it's really beautiful because it just kind of talks about life and talks about it from the perspective of a river, you know. And so there's something about, like, if there's a rock, go around it, you know, like find a path downstream, you know, like stuff like that is really about just really embracing the flow. And again, you know, I think that this is where, you know, I think it's fascinating, because when people think about peak performance, they think of like this like high, and I'm like, peak performance for me is flow. And flow, it's not about being uptight and perfect. Flow, it's really about like expressing and letting go and just sort of adjusting. It's about being flexible. I think it's really having that flexibility to just move along with how things are showing up in your life, rather than like it has to be this way. Because like you said, as entrepreneurs, oh my God, like, I mean, life is going to happen. Life will continue to happen regardless of what skills you have. You know, like people are going to drop you. You know, your launches are going to flop. People are going to send you crappy emails. People are going to unsubscribe. You know, your system's going to crash in the middle of a launch. Like all of the things that like could potentially go wrong. And I'm not saying that, you know, it's just like life happens, you know, and so even at some point stuff is going to happen. So this is not about like having certainty that everything is just going to be easy. It's just about you learning the skills to learn how to deal with all of the shit that happens with a lot of elegance and ease and grace, so that you can keep moving forward towards your mission.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we're going to have your free gift link. We've kind of talked about it already. It's the free mini course. Just the URL will be just linked up right below this video, but you can go to tinyurl.com /quantum_leap_results.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely just check it out directly below here as well. And where do you hang out most online? Are you like, where else can we find you?
Yeah, so I'll give the link again just in case. It's tinyurl.com /quantum-leap-results. Where do I hang out? I have a Facebook group that's called Luminous Conscious Entrepreneurs.
Lovely.
That I manage. So anybody that is interested in joining, and you know, we do all kinds of fun things and hang out and support each other. And then my website is intuitivebusinessmastery.com.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Amazing. Cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I love this conversation. It's 10:22 here, which I always think is a good number to finish anything on or start anything on. So thank you so much again. I massively appreciate you and your time and everything you've shared here today.
Such a pleasure, Joanna. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.